Good evening and welcome to the Genesis Science Report. I'm David Rives, and on tonight's show, we commemorate the recent 45th anniversary of Mount St. Helens with Michael Lienau, a filmmaker who survived the eruption and whose story reveals the power of God in the middle of chaos. Then Dr. Jerry Bergman explains how a new blindness treatment using gold nanoparticles highlights the stunning complexity and the design of the human eye. But first, exciting news from the cosmos. According to a 2025 article, a distant exoplanet located 124 light years away, scientists have detected potential signs of life. Well, don't get excited yet. Using NASA's James Webb Space Telescope, a team from Cambridge University discovered molecules in the planet's atmosphere, specifically dimethyl sulfide and dimethyl disulfide. So on Earth, these compounds are produced primarily by living organisms, suggesting a tantalizing possibility. Could there be biological activity beyond our solar system? However, while this marks a potential sign of life, experts still urge caution. Independent scientists emphasize that further research is necessary to confirm these findings, and then a lot of further research to say that the molecules were likely caused by biological processes. But as we explore the vastness of our galaxy, these discoveries remind us of the intricate design of creation and the mysteries that still await our understanding. The search for life, whether here or in the heavens, invites awe and reflection on our place in the universe. After all, one of the predominant characteristics of a creator is the act of creating. While we're not trying to drift into sci-fi territory or aliens and advanced life forms that we know nothing of, the very presupposition that we were created and designed implies that we have a creator who loves life. In the last 5 years alone, scientists have unveiled remarkable intricacies of life on Earth, further fueling our curiosity about potential life beyond our planet. Recent advancements in microscopy and telescopic technology have transformed our understanding of both the microscopic and the cosmic realms. Powerful electron microscopes, like the ones that we actually use here at the Wonder Center and Science Museum, allow researchers to visualize cellular processes at the nanoscale, leading to groundbreaking discoveries in microbiology and genetics. For example, the CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing mechanism has revolutionized our ability to manipulate DNA with unprecedented precision, which can be good and bad. We've talked about it a number of times on the program as new technologies develop. While on a cosmic scale, the James Webb Space Telescope, as mentioned earlier, it's expanded our capacity to observe distant galaxies, to observe stars and planetary atmospheres. Its infrared capabilities enable scientists to detect the chemical signatures of various compounds, which could offer insights into conditions that might support life, as highlighted in recent findings about these potential life possibilities on exoplanets. Now, the discovery over the past few decades of thousands of exoplanets, planets outside of our solar system, some possibly within their stars' habitable zones, marks a new era in our exploration of the universe, prompting us to study even more. You notice I say possibly a lot in these things because when it comes to cosmology, we don't know the answers to some of these questions. We're only observing something from great distances away. But as we make strides in both terrestrial and extraterrestrial research, these technological advancements, well, they kind of remind us of the intricate design that is woven into all of creation. I'm skeptical, as all scientists should be, of the newest fad or the latest interpretation of data, so we'll see where all of this leads at a later date. But I am excited that through this program, we let you be the first to know about some of these breaking discoveries and bring objectivity and a different perspective to each new report. You know, every finding in space deepens our appreciation for life on Earth, inviting us to reflect on the divine artistry of God that transcends our current understanding. I'm David Rives, and this is the Genesis Science Report.
Just outside Nashville, the Wonder Center and Science Museum, with a top 10 planetarium, kids' hands-on activities, the teen favorite 1 million volt musical Tesla show, it's worlds of fun for the entire family. Experience the wonder. Explore the science. Inspire curiosity. Embark on adventure. The Wonder Center and Science Museum.
Is there such a thing as a sure proof that God is real, that creation is true, and that we can believe the Bible?
We have a fixed amount of energy and matter in this universe. But if the universe had a beginning, naturally, everything had to have come from nothing.
Wow.
Which is the most immense violation of the first law that you could imagine.
On Wonders Without Number. Friends of Genesis Science Network, we started this channel to make an impact in the lives of both Christians and inquiring skeptics around the world. It has done that in unbelievable ways. Now, one of our viewers wrote, "I've been watching your channel for nearly a week now, and I would like you to know the blessing that it's been to me. I've never had the finances or the opportunity to attend a university, but I've been a believer for the last 37 years. Your channel has done more for my understanding of my faith than any book I've read save the Bible, and I feel like I'm finally able to attend the lecture classes I've always wanted to. Thank you so much for your ministry." I want to thank you for your generous support. GSN is no simple project and requires monthly commitments to keep it on the air. Please consider becoming a partner with us today. Just call 931-212-7990 or click Give on our website. We are making a difference. I'm David Rives, and you're watching the Genesis Science Network. Welcome back to the report. This week's Q&A submission comes from Dominant Jean, who asks, has anyone told you that Darwin's ideas are really outdated now and that those aren't what the scientific community uses anymore? He's only seen as the pioneer, one of the first to get on the right track, but not at all as the one that was perfectly correct about everything. Thank you so much for that. So let's talk about Darwin's ideas for just a moment. We all know that he is not the final say when it comes to evolutionary theory. He was one of the first to popularize those ideas. But he was living at a time when, well, we looked through a microscope and we're like, oh, well, that cell is a simple bag of enzymes, right? Now we know that a cell is as complicated as a metropolis, right? That was during a time when science had not fully caught up. We certainly hadn't mapped the human genome. We didn't know much. Well, science has progressed. But science has been progressing, and at the same time, scientists have been using Charles Darwin's antiquated ideas of universal common descent, and they've only been framing data within that antiquated colonial theory that came about in the 1800s when science had not fully caught up. At the rate that science is progressing, and again, your name is Dominant Jean, so when we look at genetics, at the rate genetics are growing and that we're learning new things, there's a breaking new discovery every single week. Well, the more we learn about genetics, the more we see this information language system that we call DNA that appears to be a code for life, a code that has a written language, what could be expressed as a written language, and that written language came from a mind. When it comes to the diversity of all life, we have still not found the transitional forms that Charles Darwin was worried about. And yet, everyone is still clinging to Charles Darwin's views that he said were coupled with this idea that there would be transitional forms, that one creature turned into another, which turned into another, which turned into another. Well, guess what? Darwin has not been vindicated. His ideas are, again, antiquated. And even though the scientific community doesn't stick with a lot of his primary ideas, they still are caught in this rut of naturalism, this rut of humanism, this rut that says that nothing created everything. And that's not a scientific view. That is not an intellectual view, especially considering where science has headed. So, Darwin was the pioneer, but he was the pioneer of something that didn't get us on the right track. He got us on the wrong track, and we've been veering off the rails ever since. If we were to get back and look openly and above board at everything within genetics, then all of a sudden we would realize it's all pointing to God's design. Now, we love connecting with our viewers, even the skeptics, so remember to keep those questions coming. You can share them with us on social media, or you can email comments at genesissciencenetwork.com. Now, if this week's question made you think twice about Darwin's legacy, you're not alone. It's true that most scientists today don't treat Darwin's original ideas as flawless, but many still cling to this framework that he introduced, that all life evolved through unguided processes over millions of years, which is the reason this week's featured resource is so important. It's called Replacing Darwin, The New Origin of Species by Dr. Nathaniel Jeanson. He doesn't just critique Darwin's outdated ideas, he replaces them with a testable evidence-based creation model that's rooted in cutting-edge genetics. Dr. Jeanson, a biologist with a PhD from Harvard, shows how recent discoveries in DNA and mutation rates points away from deep time and this slow evolutionary theory, and instead supports a biblical timeline of a special creation and rapid diversification of species after a historical flood. Now, this book answers the exact kind of arguments that we've heard in today's question and answer. What if Darwin was just the starting point, but evolution still works in principle? Well, Dr. Jeanson shows why that simply doesn't hold up, not scientifically and certainly not biblically. If you're ready to move past 19th century ideas and the modern evolutionary claims that rest on those ideas, Replacing Darwin is a must-read. You can order your copy today by visiting creationsuperstore.com. Now it's time for the Kids Corner. Now at first glance, this might look like plain dust that I'm holding up, but it's actually something way more explosive. You see, this is volcanic ash, tiny bits of glass that was blasted out of one of the most powerful natural events in recent U.S. history. It's actually the eruption of Mount St. Helens back in 1980. So on May 18th of that year, the volcano in Washington state exploded with incredible force. It sent huge clouds of ash up to 16 miles into the sky, and it left behind a crater 2 miles wide and half a mile deep. It completely flattened forests that were nearby. So thousands and thousands of trees were knocked over in just minutes of time. Now, when we think of volcanoes, we often picture red-hot liquid lava pouring out. Well, there's actually a lot more happening. You see, lava is melted rock, and when it cools down, it can form all kinds of colorful minerals like granite or sodalite or labradorite. Well, sometimes that super hot melted rock turns into glass, natural glass called obsidian. That's right, it's glass made by nature. So if the volcano blasts that glass apart during the eruption, it turns into a very fine ash, almost like powder that we just saw that can float through the air. But be careful, because since it's made of tiny pieces of glass, volcanic ash can damage engines like plane engines or helicopter engines, and it can be really dangerous to breathe in. Now, sometimes that ash clumps together and it forms something called pumice. That would look something like this. So pumice is so full of air bubbles that we're going to do an experiment. Let's see if the camera can come in on this. I've got a bowl of water right here, and I've got my pumice right here, and these pumice stones are full of air bubbles. So they're so full of air bubbles that they can actually float on water just like a sponge. Rocks floating on water. Now here's something really cool. So if we take the ash and we melt it again with high heat, it turns into this shiny green-blue glass. Let's see if I can get the coloration on camera. I'm not sure if it'll show. There you go. It shows up a little bit. Check it out. It's almost a green blue. And in person, we have this at the Wonder Center. It's so vivid when the light shines through it. These studio lights don't do it justice. But that's called helenite, and that's what I'm holding right here. These colors come from the minerals inside of the ash. So glass became ash and then turned back into glass. Well, the Mount St. Helens eruption was super impressive, but compared to other giant volcanoes in history, it was actually kind of small. Some eruptions are so huge that we call them supervolcanoes, but no matter how powerful a volcano is, let me just give you a lesson right here. The God of the Bible is never surprised. He's a whole lot more powerful than any blast that has ever happened or ever will. He is in control. Now, after the break, we are going to hear a harrowing first-hand account from the Mount St. Helens eruption, because filmmaker Michael Lienau was caught in the second blast, and he lived to tell the story, one that shaped his faith, his career, and his calling. So stay tuned for this powerful interview. The birds of the air, they were created by God in the beginning, but they are so diverse right now. He is being handed this magnificent creature.
This bird is designed. He is chock full of design. This doesn't just happen. He'll fly over your head and he'll land and you can't hear a thing.
Is that right?
It's incredible. God thought of everything when He made them.
On Wonders Without Number. I want to thank you for supporting GSN this year. Your support is helping us send this broadcast to millions of households around the globe. You know, in a society where the theories of Darwinian evolution are bombarding our youth via schools and universities and through peer pressure, we need to saturate the airwaves with the truth of real biblical science, and you are making this happen. Your one-time, monthly, or generous end-of-year tax-deductible love gift keeps this network streaming 24/7 at no cost to our viewers. Thank you for your support. I'm David Rives. Truly, the heavens declare the glory of God. Is there a biblical view of animal rights?
We've actually got a report that was in one of our British newspapers a little while back. Don't kill mosquitoes, let them take blood donation. Now here's a great example of being futile in your thinking, right?
Right.
At what point should we be looking after animals? At what point should we be treating animals as if they were humans? So it's a really popular topic.
On Wonders Without Number. Welcome back to the report. On May 18th, 1980, the landscape of the Pacific Northwest was forever changed. Mount St. Helens erupted with a force equivalent to hundreds of atomic bombs, flattening forests, altering rivers, and sending a massive ash cloud miles into the sky. Now, for most people, it was a natural disaster that was watched from a distance, but for today's guest, it was personal. Michael Lienau was just 20 years old at the time, already a filmmaker with a camera crew and a mission to capture the unfolding events. But what began as a creative assignment quickly turned into a life-threatening experience. Trapped in the blast zone during a second eruption, Michael came face to face with the power of nature and the providence of God. Now, his survival was nothing short of miraculous, and what happened during and after that moment became a defining chapter in his life. Today, he is a respected filmmaker, a storyteller, and a man whose firsthand account of Mount St. Helens offers a rare glimpse, not just into a geological event, but into the way moments of crisis can reshape faith, purpose, and perspective. Joining us now to share that story and what he's learned in the 45 years since is Michael Lienau. Michael, thanks for being here.
Great to be with you, David.
It is wonderful to have you on the program. Let's just back up for a moment to 1980. What originally brought you to Mount St. Helens, and what did you witness when you arrived in the blast zone?
Yeah, I was starting my career as a filmmaker, and I was actually on my way to film school when a small section in our newspaper said that something seismic was happening around Mount St. Helens that might lead to something volcanic. And I thought, volcano here practically in my backyard? And so I spent all my spare time following the events leading up to May 18th, 1980, covering Mount St. Helens. And I caught some early ash and steam eruptions, and it was so exciting to see this new creation happening right in front of my eyes. And so by the grace of God, I wasn't there on May 18th, but I went up there right away with my camera and started filming the devastation around the mountain. And I connected with a film crew from Seattle that was working on an educational film on Mount St. Helens. And I called them and asked them if they needed any help. And they said, yes, go to Boeing Field. We'll have a helicopter ready. Follow that black ash cloud. Now, in those days, we had no idea what that meant. But we went chasing after the ash cloud, and the helicopter flew right into the black ash cloud, made the pilot very nervous. And so we landed in a parking lot of a restaurant and started filming actually when the sky turned day to night.
Wow.
And the pilot said, let's get back to Seattle. So we started flying back. And on the way flying back, the engine quit, and we had to make an emergency landing right on the freeway there. And I was very concerning when a helicopter's engine quits in mid-flight. But we landed safely, and then I drove the film back, and the producer wanted me to go into the volcano with him to get the first ground level shots of what that looked like, because everybody had been seeing images like this of what it looked like from the air.
Yeah.
So we were the first camera crew to go in to document the devastation around Mount St. Helens. And we were only going to go in there for 4 hours. And when we first landed, there was just carnage everywhere. And the thing I remember most vividly was just how deathly silent everything was. There was no rustling of trees in the wind. There was no birds, no wildlife, nothing. It was just deadly silent.
Wow.
And so we're walking around in this, and we didn't understand what was happening. But because the heavy magnetism in the ash, our compass was spinning around in circles. We got disoriented, got lost, and we were forced to spend the night. Now, we were going to try to fly out of there by helicopter that day, but we had to spend the night. And then that night, Mount St. Helens erupted in the second largest eruption. And we were directly underneath the volcano when it blew. Now, people heard the blast 200-300 miles away, but we didn't hear anything. It was totally silent. But for 7.5 hours, it rained heavy volcanic ash on us. And I remember praying, God, help me breathe. And pretty soon it started raining, and the rain mixed in with the hot ash, and it came down like wet, hot mud falling from the sky, which is better. It cleared out the air so we could breathe. And plus, the static electricity and all the ash created these 3 to 5 mile long sheets of lightning right over our heads. And the lightning flashing through the ash made these very brilliant colors, and purple and green and orange and blue. And we didn't know what was happening. And we thought any second we could be wiped out by the volcano. Wow. And that's when I started remembering, wow, I grew up going to church. I was thinking we might not make it out of here. And the thing that scared me the most wasn't the volcano, but it was the question, if I die here today, am I going to go to heaven or hell? And I couldn't answer that question. And so I started praying, and just the simple way I knew how to pray. Mostly it was help, God, help us in this time of need. And I had this experience where because of the volcano erupting, it created this weather system and everything. It also dropped the temperatures, and it became freezing cold. And we started suffering from hypothermia, which is a very it's a way that your body shuts down, a very peaceful way to die, they say. But I remember leaning up against this log, and this was 2 days, almost 3 days in, and I was leaning up against this log, and I just wanted to fall asleep. And I remember seeing a vision, or I had this feeling of myself coming out of my body and looking back and seeing myself leaning against that tree. And as I floated further and further away from the tree, I looked across this ash field, all these downed trees, and I thought I saw this person walking towards me, and he was dragging one of these broken trees. And as he got closer to me, I saw that he was very badly injured, and there was chunks of flesh hanging off of him, and he just looked very, very bruised and bloodied. And I recognized that it was Jesus on his way to Calvary, and that no matter what I would go through at Mount St. Helens, nothing would compare to like what Jesus went through. And I woke up from this, and I just felt like I had a full night's sleep, a full breakfast, and I had full of energy. And I started hiking, and the other guys followed me, and we found this little cave in the side of a hill. And in that cave, we were able to get away from that. And I remember this little pocket Bible that my father had given me before we went in. And I thought, I need some encouragement right now. And I flipped it open, and it opened, and it said, "For your sake, we are considered as sheep to be slaughtered all the day long." Now, that was not very encouraging at that moment.
Yep.
But I read on, it said, "Nothing in neither height nor depth, nor all of creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord." Amen. And from that moment on, after that, that encountering Jesus and reading that scripture, I had total peace that I was in God's hand, that God had answered my prayer, that no matter what happened, I was in God's hands.
So, Michael,
and we still had quite a journey ahead of us.
Yes.
We were in there, trapped in there for 4 days before we were miraculously rescued by Air Force Rescue. And during that time, it was really a lot of soul searching for me, trying to really reconcile my life with God and with what we were going through. And that experience really changed my life.
Incredible. I cannot wait to have you on a Changing the Narrative to share this full story, because that's encouraging for everyone. Anyone who's going through a difficult situation, probably not life-threatening like that in the middle of a volcanic eruption, but still, we've all been through things, and I think that we can all learn lessons from this that relate to our faith. I want to thank you for sharing that incredible testimony, and I can't wait to learn more soon.
Love to share it with you. Thank you so much for having me on, David.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
You know, this is just a vivid reminder that when the ground shakes, literally or metaphorically, our faith can either falter or it can be forged in the fire. His experience at Mount St. Helens is more than just a survival story. It's a picture of providence in the middle of chaos, and one that continues to inspire 45 years later. For families who want to take this learning even further, check out the Mount St. Helens and the Ring of Fire activity book. It looks like this. It's based on the documentary that Michael made. This resource includes 40 pages of games, of puzzles, of mazes, and even a build-your-own-volcano project, a fun and educational way to explore God's creation. It's perfect for kids, classrooms, or anyone who's fascinated by the eruption of Mount St. Helens and the volatile Ring of Fire. The eruption of Mount St. Helens was sudden, it was violent, entire landscapes were reshaped in only moments' time. Forests flattened, rivers rerouted, what looked like slow geologic processes unfolding over eons. Well, it happened in only a matter of hours. It forces us to reconsider our assumptions about Earth's history, because what if other major changes in the geological record we could learn from the events at Mount St. Helens? Well, that's a question that many scientists have been asking for years, and recently an article from the Smithsonian made waves by suggesting that during the Ice Age, parts of North America were not frozen wastelands at all. In fact, maybe they looked more like grasslands, savannas dotted with bison and bighorn sheep and even mammoths. That kind of climate diversity changes how we understand the Ice Age altogether, and it actually opens up the door to a really different model of Earth's history, one that's shaped by a global flood and its aftershocks rather than deep time and slow transitions. So to help us unpack this latest research and what it means for the biblical timeline, I'm joined now by physicist and creation scientist Dr. Jake Hebert from ICR, the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Hebert's done extensive work modeling the Ice Age from a post-flood perspective, and tonight we'll talk about what fossil finds, shifting climates, and missing forests might be telling us about the not-so-frozen world of the Ice Age. Dr. Hebert, great to have you on again.
Thank you, David. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. Let's start with a quick summary. What did this Smithsonian article reveal about the natural trap cave and the Ice Age fossils that were found there?
Well, it was basically just a summary article describing this bell-shaped cave where you have an opening in the ground, and today they've got a grate over it to keep people from falling in because it's an 85-foot drop. But there was no grate there during the Ice Age, and a lot of mammals would run up, encounter that opening, and fall in down to their deaths. And so for that reason, you've got a lot of fossils down in the bottom of the cave. And so the article was really just describing how they are examining, paleontologists are examining and studying those fossils to learn more about life during the Ice Age.
Absolutely. Well, from your perspective, from a biblical perspective, how would we fit these grasslands, these savannas, all of the mammoths and bighorn sheep and all of these other types of animals into a biblical framework?
Okay, well, we think the Ice Age was triggered by the Genesis flood. There was an enormous amount of rapid seafloor spreading during the flood, and that greatly warmed the world's oceans. That put a lot of moisture into the atmosphere, enabling a lot of snowfall. And you also had volcanic eruptions, kind of like the one in the previous segment, that put a lot of aerosols into the stratosphere, and that gave you cooler summers that kept the snow and ice from melting. So we think the Genesis flood triggered an Ice Age. And one thing that's interesting about that article is by analyzing the fossil teeth of some of these creatures, they inferred that they were living in like a grassland environment. Now, that by itself might not be significant, but what puzzles evolutionary scientists is that seems to have been true all over the world during the Ice Age. You read the literature, and there are grasslands and savannas everywhere. And thick forest, based on where you find the fossil pollen, seem to have been rare during the Ice Age. Now, as biblical creationists, that makes me really excited because every single tree in the pre-flood world was killed during the Genesis flood. So that means trees, grasses, shrubs, they all had to start over. Now, grasses and shrubs grow back fairly quickly, but on the other hand, trees, they take a lot longer.
Yeah.
And so, you know, if you have a naturally seeded forest, it could easily take hundreds of years to get a thick, mature forest. Hence, we should not be surprised if thick, mature forests were rare during the Ice Age, and that's exactly what we see.
That is incredible. So in other words, we're talking about an Ice Age that came soon after the devastating events of the flood, precipitated by the warmer waters of the flood and the volcanic aerosols, and therefore the large forest growths had not had a chance to regrow.
Yes.
Okay, so how do you interpret these ancient human groups like Neanderthals within this type of a framework?
Well, we think these were just people who lived after the dispersion at the Tower of Babel. Despite the denigration of the Neanderthals for many years by evolutionists, there's absolutely no reason to think that they were in any way inferior to us. They were using tools, they buried their dead, they used fire. Some of them were living in harsh environments and caves, but you've got people in the Bible living in caves.
That's right.
So these were just descendants of Noah who lived after the Tower of Babel.
And a lot of times in the artwork that we find of whether it's, you know, sheep or deer or cattle or whatever, it's really good artwork. It's almost as if these were not primitive people. They were incredibly talented, bright people who were simply taking to these caves for structure after the devastating events of the flood. Now, we're running out of time, but I do want to hit on one more thing. The Milankovitch cycles are often cited to explain the Ice Age, and of course that brings it out over tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of years. What is that theory, and what do you see as its biggest flaws pointing back to biblical truth?
Okay. The Milankovitch theory is the claim that over tens of thousands of years, subtle changes in Earth's orbital and astronomical motions change the way sunlight falls on the Earth, and that's supposed to trigger and regulate the timing of ice ages. One of the biggest problems with that theory is that these changes in sunlight are really too small to cause an ice age in and of themselves. And also in my own research, I found out that the evidence for this theory is shockingly weak. The reason most scientists believe in the theory is because of a 1976 paper published in the journal Science titled The Pacemaker of the Ice Ages. And in my research, I found that those results were critically dependent upon an age assignment that evolutionary scientists themselves no longer accept as valid. And if you go back and redo the calculations with their number, the new age assignment that they've given it, it messes up the results.
Wow.
So I think that there's a serious question about whether or not there's even any convincing evidence for this theory at all.
That is incredible. And again, it kind of makes sense when we look at it. And science is progressing to the point that your research with other scientists' research are all pointing us back to biblical history. I love your book on climate change and the environment. And we really appreciate your insight in this. I'm definitely going to have you back in the future to continue the conversation.
Thank you, David. It was a pleasure being here.
Yes, sir. Dr. Jake Hebert. These Ice Age fossils aren't just fascinating, they actually raise some really big questions about Earth history, climate, and human origins. For those wanting to dig deeper into this topic, I would recommend Dr. Hebert's article, Missing Ice Age Forests Fit Flood Ice Age Models, which is available now at icr.org, icr.org. It's a great read, especially if you're curious about how the Genesis flood might help explain this Ice Age puzzle. Now, it's time to take a quick break, but we're going to be right back with more on the Genesis Science Report. Limestone, we see it all around the world, but what is it exactly and how did it get here?
But let's delve a little bit into limestone. This was found by our good friend John Mackay, our mutual friend John Mackay, a few years back, right? He was driving through the Peak District and he shouted, "Stop!" And he said, "I've seen limestone." And the driver was like, "We're in the middle of the Peak District, it's all limestone around here." No, I found some special limestone.
On Wonders Without Number.
Join us at the Wonder Center and Science Museum for this month's Unwrapped event, where we feature expert speakers presenting scientific and biblical discoveries.
It pays to learn history, folks.
We cannot create an aircraft even close to what these birds can do.
This changes the way we do biology.
Discounted tickets are available for an after-hours adventure, including museum admission with kids' hands-on activities, a planetarium movie, Tesla experience, and pre-show entertainment. Perfect for the whole family.
What you believe about the history of the world is going to affect the way that you study the world today.
You see a mathematical order here. You see the orthogonal lines. You see the repeating patterns.
You don't understand what it takes to make a cell. That's serious engineering.
Come be inspired as you learn. The evening presentation is free, but seating is extremely limited, so RSVP immediately at wondercenter.org.
Squids in limestone in the middle of the Grand Canyon.
But the big problem is, how did those fossils get deposited in the middle of a 7-foot thick layer? According to the narrative, is something like 36 million years in duration. I'm replacing the narrative with some type of rapid smothering event.
On Wonders Without Number. We are back and it's time to hear from you. Our first viewer voices submission tonight comes from Keith on YouTube, who says, "Thank you for shedding light on the topic of missing fossils. It's a powerful point that makes you think logically about the evidence. If humans have supposedly been around for hundreds of thousands or even millions of years, where are all the bones? This discussion really strengthens the case for the biblical account. Great work. Thank you so much, Keith. Keith is referring to a video on our David Rives Ministries YouTube channel. It's called Where Are All of the Human Fossils? It almost immediately went viral. I think it has hundreds of thousands of views. And I would encourage you to go check it out, because we have a few bags of bones, a few garbage bags full of all of the supposed ape-like ancestor fossils. And yet, we as a species have supposedly been evolving for hundreds of thousands of years. So there should be a whole lot more fossil evidence of ape-like creatures turning into us. They don't exist. Go check out the video, David Rives Ministries on YouTube, and I think that you will be surprised at the conclusions. It was shot in Africa. Now, our second testimonial comes from Miranda, who had this to say after visiting the Wonders Center. I loved how this museum combined the Bible and science. It's a great way to learn history and science, as well as some geography too. Loved the hands-on experience, as well as all of the writing material around the area. Thank you so much for that, Miranda. We are constantly amazed at the tens of thousands of people who walk through the museum and leave not just educated, but inspired. So again, we appreciate those comments. If you've been impacted by the work that this ministry is doing, I'd like to hear from you. Just connect with us on social media or email comments@genesissciencenetwork.com. Now, it's time to shift our focus from biology to morality. On this week's Genesis Science Minute, we're going to ask the question, if we're just chemicals, well, why do we care about right and wrong? Let's take a look right now.
What about ethics? If humans are just the product of evolution, we're nothing more than highly evolved animals, and our brains are nothing more than chemical reactions. So how can anyone hold someone accountable for simply behaving according to chemical reactions in their brain? The foundation for morality is the Bible. We were created in the image of God. We are not animals, and our Creator sets the rules and holds us accountable. In the book of Romans, we read that as believers, God has put His law in our hearts. In other words, we have moral consciousness. The Bible defines sin as the transgression of the law and tells us that the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord. I'm David Rives. Truly, the heavens declare the glory of God.
For more information, visit David Rives Ministries at davidrives.com. DavidRives.com.
Everything we see is a testament to God's beauty, design, justice, creativity, and ultimately it points us to the gospel message. Now it's time for this week's ministry report, and I want to share a recent episode of Wonders Without Number that's been getting a lot of great feedback. We were joined by Tommy Lohman, field paleontologist at the Glendive Dinosaur and Fossil Museum in Montana. So in our conversation, we talked about how paleontology and biblical faith go hand in hand, why the evidence we find in the ground consistently points to design, not chance. Tommy shared some fascinating insights on the biblical role of science, starting all the way back with Adam naming the animals, and how even in the details of dinosaur bones, as we say at this ministry, we discover the fingerprints of our Creator. Here's a short clip from our discussion.
Important that I think we establish a biblical worldview here, a biblical way in thinking, kind of those non-negotiables. For me, Proverbs 1:7 says, "The fear of Yahweh is the beginning of knowledge. Ignorant fools despise wisdom and discipline." There's that anchoring that if I'm going to know things, really know things about His creation, it has to start with a fear and a reverence of who God is.
Yes.
Then in Romans 1, which you've already referenced here, is for since the creation of the world, His invisible attributes, both His eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made, which that is so key right here, so that they are what? Without excuse. And so what we recognize is that when we look at creation, which is ultimately in my mind just simply science, being scientific, what should we see? But the hand of God upon it. His eternal power and His divine nature are so important. And as Psalm 19:1 reminds us, the heavens are telling of the glory of God. They're declaring it, which is basically saying they're showing us who God is. And
so the heavens are, and the stones would cry out, and everything. It's like literally we can't study anything within the scientific world without seeing that.
No. And so to not see it is to ignore it and deny it.
Yeah.
And so we have that framework in place. And so for me to kind of sum up this part of it is Jesus Christ is before all things. He's the creator of all things. He's the sustainer of all things, and he is the transcendent power and presence over all things.
Holding it all together.
Holding it all together. And so this, to kind of use that as a framework, when we come back to Genesis chapter 2, Adam naming the animals, what is Adam technically doing? What is this process looking like? Well, there's a term called nomenclature, which is the naming of the animals. And we see that kind of that basic establishment. Then there's taxonomy, where he's beginning to divide the animals out. And ultimately within that, he's doing biology. And so you're either seeing the literal foundation of the discipline of biology set here in Genesis chapter 2.
Yeah, it's just a small piece of the bigger conversation, and we could have kept going for hours. So if you want to dive deeper, you can find our full episode with Tommy Lohman right now at creationsuperstore.com. It's available for digital download, and while you're there, you can check out our entire library. There is well over 130 episodes of Wonders Without Number, each one designed to equip you with biblical truth, scientific clarity, and confidence in God's Word. Now, the prayers and generosity of our viewers continues to make all of this possible. Your monthly support helps ensure that we can continue to share the wonders of God's creation and the gospel message with individuals literally all over the globe with this program, with individuals all over the country with the Wonder Center and Science Museum, and with individuals as a result of our other television networks and our YouTube channel, literally millions around the world. So I invite you to partner with us in ministry by making a tax-deductible contribution. You can visit our website or call 931-212-7990 to donate and to learn more about this work. Next, we turn inward to something more powerful than any supercomputer. It's something even more powerful than our cell phone in our pocket, and yet sometimes underutilized. This week's Heavens Declare explores what it really means to be fearfully and wonderfully made as we discuss our brain. Let's take a look right now.
Psalm 139 says, I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well. Does the Bible know best? And it's interesting to note that the most complex computer ever designed and developed was made in only 9 months. And I'm not talking about my super sophisticated smartphone. I'm talking about the human brain. It's about 100 billion neurons communicating with around 100 trillion cells in our bodies as we speak. You know, that's much more sophisticated than the entire World Wide Web put together. But when you think about it, it takes intelligence to design something. An elegant skyscraper, an automobile. When I say it takes intelligence to design something, I mean even the human body. That's right, we are not the result of random chance, accidents over millions of years of evolution. Just like the psalmist says, we're fearfully and wonderfully made. I'm David Rives. Truly, the heavens declare the glory of God.
It's incredible to think that we have that much power, and it's been given to us by God. And again, sometimes we rely more on our cellular devices, or we rely more on our TVs to do our thinking for us. Let's get back to actually using the brain that the Lord has given us. Up next, researchers are using gold nanoparticles to restore sight. But what does this futuristic technology reveal about the eye's design? Well, Dr. Jerry Bergman joins us to show how even our attempts at healing reflect the complexity of God's creation. So don't go anywhere. Hi, I'm David Rives, and I'm inviting you to visit the Creation Superstore, the largest Origins-related store in the world. Not only will you find every book and video title on creation versus evolution, science, but also every resource that teaches us about our origin and how it all takes us back to Genesis, a grand designer, the God of the Bible, and ultimately, yes, the gospel message. Documentaries your family can trust, fossils, teaching videos, children's books, church Bible studies, homeschool supplements, and expert scientific literature. If you can't find a title, call us up and we'll add it. Normally, you'd have to visit dozens of sites to gain access to all of the titles that are out there, and then you would be at a loss to whether the book or video was worth the purchase. But not here. We've curated the best of the best into top 10 lists. And on some of my favorite products, you'll find the Rives rating, where I help guide you on the best resources available for not only those who love history, biblical studies, and creation science, but also great products at the layman level, easy to understand for those who are learning or want their children and grandchildren to be exposed to a biblical worldview. Just look for the Rives rating to find my personal favorites. Use the search bar to look up a topic or follow our menu to sort by ministry, subject, or author. Give us a call at 931-212-7990 as you're browsing. We have ministry volunteers who will do their best to assist you at all hours of the day and even help you place your order. Yes, a real person. Get ready for a secure shopping experience brought to you by the leaders of creation-based research. Your purchase goes towards ministry outreach and also supports the authors and organizations who publish the material, most of whom are personal friends and colleagues of mine. I'm David Rives. Truly, the heavens declare the glory of God. Welcome back to the report. When you think about cutting-edge treatments for blindness, the last thing you might expect is gold. But according to a recent study out of Brown University, researchers are exploring the use of gold nanoparticles, real gold, combined with laser light to partially restore vision in patients that are suffering from retinal degeneration. So rather than repairing damaged rods and cones in the eye, this new technique, it kind of bypasses them entirely by stimulating deeper retinal cells using targeted heat from these gold particles. So it sounds pretty futuristic, but it's already being tested in lab animals with promising results. Joining me now is biologist, educator, and author of over 50 books, Dr. Jerry Bergman. He's here to help us break down the science behind this technology and what it means for the future of vision and design. Jerry, it is great to have you back on the report.
Good to be here. Thank you much.
Absolutely. So this new treatment, it kind of sounds like sci-fi, using gold to bring back vision. What was your first reaction to hearing about it?
Well, it was somewhat amazing, but gold has been used a lot in medicine because the body doesn't react to gold. Most people don't have a problem dealing with gold. That's why so many things are made out of gold, rings and bracelets and so on, because we don't end up with a problem. And so likewise, gold can be used. Now, these are nanoparticles, so they can't even be seen by a microscope. It takes an electron microscope in order to see them. But they're really small. They put them in a fluid, and the fluid just is absorbed through the eye. And we all take eye drops, or many of us do at times. I take eye drops actually because of glaucoma. And so the glaucoma, basically what it does is it allows the drainage of the fluid to increase. So it opens up the drainage system so I don't end up with too much pressure in the eye, causing, of course, glaucoma, causing blindness. So the gold particles work a little bit differently. What they use is a laser to excite them, and exciting them basically what causes them to basically stimulate. It's kind of like, well, it's electrical because, of course, the nervous system is electrical, and they use the excitement in order to turn on the bipolar cells and ganglion cells. And these cells basically are supportive of the rods and cones. And so many times the problem is not the rods or the cones, but the supporting cells, the ganglion cells and the bipolar cells. And so once these are stimulated to respond, then of course the eye cells, the rods and the cones, can likewise respond. And it's so far, the results are promising. And my thought is this opens up a whole new world of possible treatment. We can treat common problems in the body, in the eye in this case, by using this technique. The eye, of course, is the easiest way because the laser light can go through the eyeball and go to the area where they need to stimulate these cells, which are part of the system they use. And so, but possibly it can be used for other techniques as well. But certainly it has been promising in rats and other systems they've used, and it could likewise be very promising for cell treatment in the eye.
Well, so researchers using this method, they're kind of targeting cells that aren't usually involved in vision, which kind of looks like there's more backup or other mechanisms that could be utilized, built in, or I might dare say engineered in, than we even previously realized. So do you think that this kind of discovery strengthens the case for intelligent design within biology?
Oh, clearly it does, because the rods and the cones by themselves do nothing. They, in order to function, they have to have many other cells. Among the other cells are, of course, the ganglion cells and the bipolar cells, and these are the two important ones, but there are other cells as well that are important. So we're talking about a complex system which all the parts must function in order for vision to occur. And if one or two parts don't function well, you're blind. And so therefore it is clearly irreducibly complex. Eyesight is not going to work until you have the complete set of cells. And there's not just 4 or 5, there's probably 20. Now we don't know about all of these because we usually learn about a cell when disease occurs. Then we can figure out what's going on, and we find a certain cell is defective in some way, and then we can hopefully understand better how the eye works. But oh yes, clearly irreducibly complex.
You know, you've written an incredible book about vestigial organs, and how back in 100 years ago, there were 100 supposedly vestigial leftovers from evolution. Now we're down to 0. So there's a lot of buzz about science catching up with understanding what the body can already do. But from a creation perspective, wrap it up here in the last few seconds. What can we learn about God's creation and beauty and complexity when it comes to the eye?
Number 1 is enormous. Number 2 is complex. And number 3, we have to understand the whole system before we can treat, in this case, certain eye diseases. And clearly complex, there's no way that this system could have evolved. It has to have all the parts for it to function, all the parts. And some we probably still don't know about yet.
And again, that points us back to a very sophisticated designer who engineered these components for our good, not random mutational natural selection events. Dr. Jerry Bergman, thank you so much for being here today.
It's great to be here. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. You know, this is a reminder that, hey, even in a fallen world where disease and decay affects our bodies, God has given us minds capable of exploring solutions and eyes that were wonderfully made from the start. That is it for today, and I want to thank you for joining us on the Genesis Science Report. Until next week, keep looking up. I'm David Rives. Truly, the heavens declare the glory of God.